let's go back to 2020 and one of the weirdest NFL seasons of all time. We begin with the empty stadiums. Now, of course, if you know why the empty stadiums, it was because of the pandemic, the virus that was going on. I still have no idea if I can say it here on YouTube, but most stadiums, well, all the stadiums were reduced to no fans, or about 25% of them, which was about 20,000 fans could show up. Now, I'm not gonna lie, while this was going on, I didn't really mind it too much. I didn't think it was too weird. And then the first game of 2021 happened with the Bucs and Cowboys, and all the fans were there, and I realized I missed the fans way more than I thought, and we could never go back to those empty stadiums. I think it was even worse seeing empty stadiums during playoff games because, well, I mean, it's a playoffs, it shouldn't be empty, it should be electric and hyped, including the Super Bowl, which at least we got fans there in the first place, but only about 20,000 showed up, and most of the seats were filled with cardboard cutouts. This can be a controversial take to some, but looking back and even at the time, I think we all knew that stadium restrictions and restrictions in general and overall life was really stupid to look back on, and it did not stop the spread of COVID at all. Now, another reason this season was really weird was that it was Tom Brady's first season without the Patriots, and this season he'd be suiting up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, coming into their 2019 wildcard game, it was rumored that Tom Brady could leave the Patriots after the season because he'd be a free agent, and then after the abomination against the Titans in that wildcard game, it was more obvious and more appearing that Tom Brady had played his final game as a New England Patriot. And well, right after free agency began and a few days into quarantine, Tom Brady would sign with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was weird seeing Tom Brady in another uniform, but it was also really satisfying as it officially ended the Patriots dynasty. Thank goodness. And to make things even weirder, to replace Tom Brady in New England, the Patriots would sign Cam Newton, the former MVP, and, well, as we all know, this only lasted one season, and looking back, this might have been even weirder than Tom Brady on the Bucs. Number 3, maybe the weirdest thing on here so far, which is saying something because we've had a whole pandemic shutting down stadiums and the GOAT switching teams, and that's a whole football team and the Washington Redskins changing their name to the Washington Football Team. Now, if you remember during 2020, everyone was getting really sensitive, mainly towards boredom and I don't know, it was really just boredom. Due to boredom, everyone was getting really sensitive, and they noticed that the Redskins had a offensive name, and it was getting so bad, the backlash of the name was getting so bad that sponsors like Nike were pulling away. And if they didn't change their name, Nike would no longer be affiliated with the Redskins. But the worst owner in football at the time, Dan Snyder, thankfully he's not an owner anymore, had some options for a new team name, or he could just keep the Redskins. So, what did he decide? Possibly the laziest and most bland option you could think of for a team name in classic Dan Snyder fashion, the Washington Football Team. I still can't get over how bad this team name is. And this team somehow made the playoffs, and they weren't even good either. They went 7-9, and they played in the worst division of all time, the 2020 NFC East. Truly only something that happened in 2020. And I cannot believe a team by the name of Football Team made the playoffs. It's absolutely disgusting. Number 4, in the first 5 games of the season, Dak Prescott was putting up video game numbers while his defense was one of the worst I've ever seen. In just 5 games, he threw for 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, but the eye-popping stat here is that he almost threw for 2,000 yards. This included a game against the Browns where he threw for 502 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception, and you guessed it, they lost 49-38. Sadly for him and the Cowboys, he'd get injured in Week 5, and he'd be out for the rest of the season, and this is one of the more gruesome injuries I've ever seen on a football field or in sports in general, and this is a huge loss for the Cowboys since they were 2-3, and he was a big reason why they had 2 wins in the first place. Now at number 5, we are introduced to a legend. During the middle of the season, the Ravens backup quarterback Trace McSorley would become a meme throughout the whole NFL world, basically saying that he's the GOAT, he's the greatest quarterback of all time, and it was mainly because of this song that was made for him. Which, by the way, of all people to make a song for, why Trace McSorley? Why do you wake up one day and say, yeah, I'm gonna make a song about he was a Penn State quarterback at the time? Why would you make a song about a Penn State quarterback? It just makes no sense. They'd also try this with Ben Gucci DiNucci, which wasn't as successful as Trace McSorley, which, by the way, Ben DiNucci was one of 3 backup quarterbacks that replaced Dak Prescott during the season. At number 6, we have all the postponed games that happened this season. And of course, these games are postponed because of the sickness going around. Now, our first postponed game happened in week 4 when the Patriots-Chiefs game was postponed to Monday because some Patriots players, including Cam Newton, got COVID. So Brian Hoyer had to start for the Patriots, and it was really weird seeing games being played on Monday if it's not Monday Night Football, or Tuesday. We'll get into that soon. But of course the Chiefs won. But like I said, we get double headers on Monday, we get some games on Tuesday, and we even get some games on Wednesday. And it was just really weird seeing these games being played on these days. The craziest example of this came in week 12 when the Ravens and Steelers played, and this game was originally meant to be played on Thursday Night Football on Thanksgiving, but many players from both the Ravens and Steelers caught COVID, and this would take so long to reschedule, and so many players got COVID that they didn't end up playing until the next week on Wednesday, 1 day away from the next week of football games. Wait a minute, is that Trace McSorley? Yeah, so Lamar Jackson caught COVID and Robert Griffin was starting this game. I don't know how he's still in the league at this point, but he got hurt in the middle of the game, so Trace McSorley stepped in and he balled out, and he did this.
Family and the whole deal all out there in Wisconsin. There's McSorley.
Throw it on a dime like I ain't even trying. Just a kid from Briarwoods, I'm wearing number 9. And Coach Franklin down at
This was one of the best moments of the year. This season, the Pittsburgh Steelers were really good, and well, they were really fraudulent too. As you see, the Steelers started off 11-0, but if you look at the games, they had some good games, like beating the Browns 38-7. But if you look, they were barely winning a lot of these games, and a lot of these teams were not very good. They had backup quarterbacks in, and overall just were crappy. And the winning streak would come to an end in week 13 to the football team of all teams, and the Steelers up to that point had number 1 seed possession in the AFC through the whole season, and their season after this game just completely crumbled. One last weird thing that happened before we get into the playoffs is that the 49ers had to play their home games in the Cardinals Stadium. So during the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, California was getting really strict on COVID rules, surprise, surprise, and it was getting so bad the 49ers had to move out to Arizona to play their home games, and it was so bad that they moved the Rose Bowl out of Pasadena, and it had to be played in Dallas, Texas, and well, this is so cursed. California, I don't care. You can never do this again. What makes this even funnier is that during the end of the season in week 16, the 49ers would play the Cardinals in Arizona, as the Cardinals were the home team, but it was really a home game for both teams, and CJ Beathard, of all people, would lead the 49ers to a 2012 win. It's now playoff time, so let's look at our teams. At the number 1 seed in the AFC, we have the Chiefs, who had a league best 14-2 record and were led by reigning Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes. At the number 2 seed, we have a new AFC East champion breakout team, the Buffalo Bills, who were led by recent trade acquisition wide receiver Stephon Diggs and breakout MVP candidate Josh Allen. The Steelers choked and collapsed and finished 12-4, but they still won the AFC North and had the 3rd seed. But the Titans finished as the 4th seed, finished 11-5, won the AFC South, and were led by running back Derrick Henry, who just rushed for 2,000 rushing yards and won Offensive Player of the Year. The Ravens finished as the 5th seed, but I'm not really going to talk about them. Something to talk about, though, is the Cleveland Browns making the playoffs for the first time since 2002, and it looks like this team was finally revived from the dead. And I almost forgot to mention this, but the playoff format had expanded to 14 teams, 7 per conference, and the last team to make it in the AFC were the Colts, who were led by Phillip Rivers, of all people. Yeah, just like Tom Brady, he spent his entire career with one team, and then he went to the Colts in 2020 after playing for the Chargers since 2004. We go over to the NFC, which was dominated by number 1 seed the Green Bay Packers all season long, who were led by 2020 MVP Aaron Rodgers. So even though it was a weird season, I guess some things don't change. The NFC West was won by the Seattle Seahawks, who were led by quarterback Russell Wilson, who was the MVP up until about week 9, like always up to that point, and breakout second-year wide receiver DK Metcalf. And what's weird to think about is that so far, this is the last time Russell Wilson has made the playoffs. Like I said earlier, the football team somehow made the playoffs, as entering the playoffs, they were down to their 4th string quarterback in Taylor Heineke, but the Commanders, the football team were led by Defensive Rookie of the Year and 2nd overall pick, Chase Young. Tom Brady and the Bucs only finished as the 5th seed, as Drew Brees and the Saints beat them out for the NFC South title. And I almost forgot to mention, but Rob Gronkowski was also on the Buccaneers too. Yeah, he came out of retirement to join up with Tom Brady in Tampa. But even though this was a weird year, some things never change. And the Super Bowl would be reigning Super Bowl champs in the Chiefs, who would also make 2 more Super Bowl appearances after that, and many more to come. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who aren't familiar, but someone who is familiar, is their quarterback, Tom Brady. This was seen as a passing of the torch game from one go to the upcoming go. And this unusual season would end with a familiar sight: Tom Brady hosting up the Lombardi Trophy and winning the Super Bowl, as he would lead the Buccaneers in his first season in Tampa to a 31-9 victory and win the Super Bowl. We will never see another season like this in our lifetimes. Stadiums being restricted to little to no fans, games being postponed. I mean, we saw it all in 2020. And, well, that's about it. Goodbye.